Hey, what's up? Travel Chronicles. This is the Life Guiding Principle Chronicles, Chapter 1, the overview. And what I want to do here the next couple of minutes is kind of go over these principles that I've come up with. And it's a system, it's a framework of things that I think are pretty much encompassing of, I don't want to say every aspect of life, because there are certain things that, maybe aren't in here or like a deep subset of one of the other things. But like on the surface, I want to go through these 9 principles that I've, they're not new or anything like that necessarily, but the framework and structure, I think, is fairly unique among things that maybe somebody looks at as like a self-help book or, a guide through midlife crisis or something like that. This is a framework that someone who's young can adapt, pick up. And I really look at it through the lens of how I watched other people age, things that I've read, things that I've listened to, and what do you need to be successful later in life, right? So there's long lifespan and health span, and this is something that tries to maximize that health span. How do you get all these different things in that you need from a human standpoint to maximize your opportunity and success later? That's it. That's all these things are, is just a guide. And if something like really makes a ton of sense and you want to go with that because that makes a ton of sense. But I've taken things, so the Liver King, God bless him, he had his 9 tenets of ancestral living, right? And these are 9 guiding principles, for life, 9 life guiding principles. And it's nothing like that, the ancestral tenets, right? Because he was trying to sell his own thing. Like, he was trying to sell something. Like, he was a salesman. Like, here's this. This is for longevity. This is for, helping you live longer. I've also got supplements I'm selling and stuff. Like, that's what he was doing. And he was doing it on steroids, right? So, like, it was a complete sham what he was doing. But like, there were some things that he hit on that were probably pretty good, but there's some stuff that just were like, okay, or this is an overlap, or this fits in like one piece of a category of the things that I'm about to go over. And there's a lot of things that are just completely missing, in my opinion, from what he was doing. And he was trying to make this life structure. The other Brian Johnson, not the Liver King, but the tech millionaire that went into longevity, he's kind of doing the same thing. He has this philosophy of don't die. So he got to his own philosophical structure through the things that he was doing. But I think even later, like within the last couple weeks or something, he did some testing with mushrooms or something, and now he feels like he's left something out of his thing. And his is really a narrow focus. If you think about it, it's kind of like, whenever you're doing something in your life, it's like, is this going to kill you or not? And if it's something that's leading you down the path of killing you or causing you to die, you don't do it, right? Because you don't want to die. So everything that he does is longevity based, and this is not that, because I can't give you, like, if I had something to give you, so here's 5 more years that you can add to your life if you take this, and it's like, oh, okay, awesome, all right. Then you got to think, well, those 5 years are at the tail end. Like, how are you going to be physically, mentally at the end of your life where, you want to live to your fullest, in my opinion, up to the end. Like, I watched, both my parents pass away, and the end of their life, the last 2-3 years, for both of them was incredibly tough, especially for my mom with dementia, where, she was kind of trapped in her own head. But, my dad was going through a lot of physical stuff, where he had 2 surgeries, and he was basically, restricted to the house. It was a huge ordeal just for him to get out of the house. So, it's how can you make the most of it? And granted, look, something in life physical may come along, may, get you. But hopefully this structure is something that gives you that best opportunity to overcome that and be successful on the back end. Yeah, you may go through one of those valleys. There's peaks and there's valleys in life. You may go through one of those valleys, but hopefully it's not as deep as what it would have been, and you can come up on the other side with a higher peak than where you ride. So with that being said, let's get into the structure and the 9 life guiding principles. So first off, the structure. There are 3 parts with 3 internal parts, and it's very deliberate. The first part is the internal part of the person. It's just the person acting on the person, right? The second part, the major section, is the person, the individual, acting outwardly to the rest of the world, to other people, essentially. And the third piece is what the individual takes from the outside world to keep them going, to fuel them, if you will. So let's start with the internal part. For me, there are 3 sections in the internal part. The first one I call reflect. And that's where you take either the beginning of the day, end of the day, or maybe after an activity during the day, and you kind of, reflect on it. You meditate on what happened. You evaluate, the situation. If it's early in the morning, you lay out a plan of what you're going to do for the day to make the best use of your time. If it's at the end of the day, you're kind of evaluating how did things go, and you're making a plan for the next day because you need to hit the ground running. It's that type of thing where you're giving yourself, some time during the day just to think about what you need to do. Maybe there's some breathing, some meditation in there, something to just kind of, center yourself and give yourself a little break from everything that you're doing to look at the big picture. The second internal thing is challenge. And what do I mean by challenge? I mean, you're doing something, or the individual is doing something challenging for them that day. Mostly, I would say, in the physical realm. So you're doing something, lifting weights, running, doing push-ups, stretches. You're challenging the function of your body. As you age, you need to be able to move. You need to be able to, carry groceries in the house at a minimum. You need to be able to get up off of the ground. Like, those are important things where you need to at least have that baseline every day, where you're challenging that baseline every day. And as you get into it more and more, then you start doing, progressive overload, where you're keeping track of how much you're lifting, how much you're running. You're trying to do a little bit more every time. You're going to competitions, you're going to races, or, lifting events, or, playing a sport of some sort in some type of competitive atmosphere where you're out there trying to get better at it, do better at it, and challenge yourself from a physical standpoint. I believe that's incredibly important. The third piece on the internal side is restore, right? So you go out, you challenge yourself every day. You have to take a certain amount of time to recover, to let the body heal itself. And just this particular section, we'll get into what you eat and what you ingest later, but this section is more of how are you sleeping? Are you doing a cold or heat treatment? Get in the sauna a little bit. Do massage for the muscles. Stretch out. Those types of things to help you recover and repair the body from an individual standpoint. Even fasting, where you don't eat intentionally in order to throw your body into a repair state. So those are the 3, and I think that cycle, that sequence, that reflect, challenge, restore, it kind of makes a lot of sense. Here's the plan for the day. All right, now I go out and challenge myself, and now I go into a restore mode to get myself ready for the next day. Kind of plan that out, challenge, kind of repeat, have that stuff on, every day. So there may be certain days where you can't challenge yourself, but, make note of that during that reflect process, and then try to pick up the challenge the next day. The next big section is the outward, the individuals affect outwardly. And there's 3 sections here. And the first one of those that I have is serve, right? So I think it's important to have that outward reach into an individual's community. Like, you have to be involved somewhere. And this doesn't have to be, I mean, it could even be your job where you're receiving compensation for doing a job, right? You're out there, you're using your abilities, your talents to serve in a capacity. Yes, you are being rewarded directly for it, but you're still doing something, you're still contributing, right? There's also, volunteer work, it could be at a church, after school activities, if you're helping kids, it could be any type of thing that you're involved with in a group, or just being involved in a community and just giving of your talents and abilities, right? That's what it is. Or even serving, somebody else, like a family member or something like that. But it's a very important, and I'll get into it later. Hopefully this is a series of some sort of, like a good way to do it and a bad way to do it, but mostly just giving of your abilities and talents. The second piece of this is connect. And what that means is, like, actually trying to connect with other people. You can go out and serve and just, hand stuff out to people and not really be direct. Like I work in a basketball league for the church, and, I'm sitting there running the clock. I'm not directly interacting with people, but I'm doing something to help everyone's experience. You know what I mean? So that's a type of serving. But the connect part is when you have those, heartfelt conversations with people where you shake hands and it's like, hey, how are you doing? And you're really, intentional about it. You're in the moment. You're sincere about the connection, about asking somebody or being around somebody, especially having the tight bonds with family, with friends. It could be just, sending a text every day, or, telling somebody that you love them, just having that direct connection. You also connect with your co-workers, people that you are serving with. Like, that's an important bond to have, and to have it be positive, right? Not something where you're just slogging through where it's a negative connection, where I got to do this, but I really hate that person that I'm around. Like, that's not good. You need to really evaluate that situation. We'll get into that later. The last piece for acting outwardly is inspire. And I think this is important from a human aspect to feel like you're not just contributing, but affecting other people in a really, really positive way. And inspire can be, a multitude of things. I think, like, at the, I don't want to say at the bottom, but like at the easiest entry point, it's maybe a social text, or, a social post of some sort, of something that, inspires you, that you find, beautiful or uplifting or motivational. And it's like, hey, everybody, hey, take a look at this. That can be inspiring in that way. It's also inspiring to get in front of people, to talk, to coach, to, get your ideas in front of people. And you could, develop something like this. Maybe this is inspiring, right? And help people change their lives. Like, that's awesome and great. But even like a little view into you and what you think and what you are able to give outwardly without, necessarily serving somebody or connecting with somebody. Just, hey, here's my thoughts on this, guy, run with it. And I think you see in people that not just are successful, but have that longevity piece. Like, they're inspiring from a standpoint of, what they've done in their life, the stories that they're able to tell, the things that they've done and seen and been, and, or who they've interacted with in the past, or even raising their kids. Like, everybody has something inspirational to give. And I think it's important to find that point of what somebody feels like they do really well, where they can give back to other people, not just go and serve and, put your time in to help other people do something. It's like, this is really, really important to you to get out there, that message out there to other people. So those are the 3 things for that outward acting piece. The last thing is the outward world acting on the individual. So we'll start with the mind part. Right? Now, think of this as the mind soul, body piece of everything that's outside coming in. So the first piece is the mind, and I consider this the learning piece. Learn. So this is whatever information you're taking from the outside world, you're bringing into your own mind to absorb. And the more active and curious you are, the more rewarding that phase is, the more joy you're going to have in learning something, of getting better at something. And it could be something for a job, or it could be learning in the school. For young people, it's just having that joy in figuring something out for the first time, for really digging into something. And I think the ultimate piece here is taking that knowledge from the outside world, whether it be videos, podcasts, books, whatever it is, articles from online. However you get that information, bringing it in and actually incorporating it into your life in a positive way. Like that's the peak to me. Is you're taking something, you're learning it, and it's something that you can use to make everything better for you. The next thing is that spiritual piece. I call this nature. And this is your connection to everything in the outside world. So you're looking at the trees, the grass, the birds. You're able to get out there, feel the weather, feel the rain on your face, the snow, the sunlight. Like all of that's important. And also have a spiritual connection where you get into the Bible or religious texts. If you're not into the Bible, if you're into something else, like get into that real spiritual context of connecting at an even deeper level than just surface stuff that you're interacting with outside. But I think it's important to be in nature, to feel different things on your skin, on your body, to see the things if you can. And if a sense is missing, perhaps you concentrate on the other. One of the other senses makes that up. It's if you're deficient in some area or you can't get to some area, there are constraints that we'll take a look at it. And it's nothing to concerning. It's like, oh, well, I can't do that, so I guess I'm just screwed. It's like, no, there's a reason why you can't do this part. You can't hold that against yourself. If you want to achieve your maximum, you've got to work through limitations, whether they be self-imposed or environmentally imposed. The last piece, and then I'll end for today, is sustain. And I call it sustain because I don't think people look at eating as a destructive thing to the body. And the more I've looked at it, read, listened to, what have you, eating is a very destructive process. And I'm not saying destructive, but when you eat, it takes away from anything else. Like it's a system that your body is doing, and it makes it difficult to do anything else, right? That's why I say if you eat, wait 15 minutes before you go swimming so you don't cramp up, because your body is taking all the energy, everything that you have, into digesting that food. It disrupts sleep. If you eat too close to bed, if you eat too much, you can have other problems, and it's a hard thing to do. Or if you don't eat the right stuff, or drinking alcohol or taking drugs, like all these things that you take out, it's very important to take out of the world. It's very important that if you want the maximum, goodness for yourself, to improve yourself, that you try to take in foods that are healthy for you, right? You stay hydrated. You take in electrolytes if you're being incredibly active, and challenging yourself. You're taking in, supplements if you need them to restore things that you're deficient in. All those pieces are important, but that's why I call it sustain and not eat or fuel, because you're trying to maximize what you're bringing in to keep you going. And even long term, like, okay, yeah, you can eat that donut today. I'm not telling anybody not to eat donut or cake or a piece of ice cream, when they're, at a social engagement or out, doing something enjoyable. But you don't want to do that every single day, right? For every meal. Like, you've got to pick the good stuff if you want to make the most of it. All right, so that's all I've got for today. Those are the 9 life guiding principles. And like I said, I've seen other things where it has all this stuff in them. It's not laid out the same way. It doesn't have this internal aspect, outside aspect, and outside coming in aspect. So I think that's important. And I think it's going to allow people to, work on certain things and help the whole system, right? You can work on one spot. If you work on challenge, and you get better at that, maybe it gives you more energy to go serve people, right? And then you start looking at what you're taking in from outside. And, the whole system is very circular. It's very interconnected. But it all comes back to the individual at the very center. Okay, that's all I've got for today. Be careful. Be COVID-free. Later.